Welcome to The Quest for Glory, where I talk about my many, many video game hot takes. I'm your host, Kat White. This episode of The Quest for Glory, we're going to take a little deep dive into The Last of Us. Specifically, what my thoughts are on the differences between the show and the game, the first game specifically. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because the second season is coming out in 2025, very, very soon. And I thought it would be relevant to talk about. The Last of Us is also one of my favorite game series. It's a very, very good cinematic piece of work, and I am very glad that they actually decided to make a video game adaptation, or not a video game adaptation, a show adaptation. Historically, show adaptations of video games have not done very well. They just don't match the storyline of the actual game that we're playing in the very beloved game. But shows like The Last of Us have done, I want to say that they did it very, very well. And this is because they actually, the showrunner himself was the person who created the video game, which is, wonderful. I think they did a great job. So today we're going to be not reading an article, but I'm basing this off of an article called The Last of Us, Every Major Difference Between the Game and the Show, by Matthew Bird. This is off of denofgeeks.com. I didn't have time to watch the show over the week and write notes about it, but this is just a reminder of what different points were in the show. I very much remember the show very well. I rewatched it maybe a month ago before I decided I wanted to do a podcast about this. So let us get started. First thing is the first hot take is who is playing Ellie. I very much like the person who plays Ellie. I think that Bella Ramsey did a very, very good job of playing Ellie, which not a lot of people agree with me on that. They think she looks too young, and she's too dough-faced, or I should say they are too young and too dough-faced to be able to play Ellie in the Last of Us show, and they thought the showrunner should have recast them in the second season, but I think it was really good, because in the first game, Ellie's like 15, 16 years old, still pretty young, if I remember that correctly. Ellie is still pretty young, and in the second game, she's not much older, she's like 17, 18. It makes sense that she looks the same with like, in looks. She just looks a little bit more hardened, which they can do with makeup. So, as a technician myself, they can do it with makeup very, very easily. So, we'll start with episode 1, called When You're Lost in the Darkness, which the very first part that we saw in it was, there was a talk show at the beginning of the show that there was not in the beginning of the game. We see this talk show, how they're talking about the cordyceps and stuff like that, and it's giving us a very good intro into what the cordyceps actually were, how they infect ants, and then if the world becomes a little bit hotter, the cordyceps could potentially mutate and become, take over humans, which obviously does happen. I think it's a very good intro into what the show and the concept of the show and the game are. It's post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse, but they're not really zombies. It's like a whole thing. I love the way that they did the actual zombies in this show. It's very, very different than pretty much any other zombie show movie out there. And this is very widely agreed on in the Last of Us community. They liked the little talk show that begins at the beginning of it. That begins at the beginning of the show. It like I said earlier, it's a very good introduction into what the show actually is and what the concept of the game actually is. So another thing is that they actually changed the timeline. They set it back a decade. So the beginning of the game takes place in 2013. However, the show starts in 2003. It really doesn't do anything other than, technology is different than in the game, which, whatever. I thought it was an okay change. Didn't really need to happen, but I liked it. It doesn't make more sense, doesn't make less sense. So, there's that. This is something that pulled my heartstrings out. In the beginning of the game, we play as Joel's daughter, Sarah. While she goes through the beginning of the apocalypse until she eventually dies. There's a lot less time with Sarah in the game than there are in the show, which means in the show, your heart is torn out a little bit more. I had not played the game, because I have not played the game, but I have watched many playthroughs of the game, because I don't own a PlayStation, and, my computer can't handle The Last of Us to play on it. So I watched many playthroughs of the game already, which means I knew what was going to happen in the show. Allegedly, I was supposed to know what was happening in the show. Things did get changed. Obviously, I wouldn't be talking about this if they didn't. You spend so much more time with Sarah, and you get to know Sarah a little bit more. And I was watching this with my dad, who had never played the game, and he's like, "Oh, she's totally gonna. She's not gonna survive this." I didn't spoil anything for him because we were watching at the same time. I had already known he did not, but he's like, "Oh, zombie show." He loves zombie shows, so it actually made me cry when Sarah died in the show, which it did not in the game. It made me cry because you get to know her so much more. You get to know her personality a little bit more. How she's like a very sarcastic teenage girl, that kind of stuff. And the way that she dies, oh my gosh, yes, the video game did that so well. You could tell the emotion in the video game because they were doing motion capture in the video game for these scenes, but seeing her get shot in the actual, physical form of human beings acting this out, oh my lord. Pedro Pascal, and I don't remember the name of the actor that played Sarah. I think they pulled it off so well, and you could tell that there was an actual connection there. And, I thought the way that she died and the way that it built up to her death was so very good. And we learned a little bit more about how the world actually, quote unquote, ended a little bit more because of this. So I thought it was a great addition. I think that is another thing that a lot of people did agree with. I'm going to skip over this next point, but it's Tessa and Joel's relationship. It's shown more. I thought it was good. They had a little situationship going on there, A major thing that people did not like was how the cordyceps infection spread. In the game, they are spread by spores, which, definitely makes sense. I did like the way that they did that in the games. And they actually don't spread by spores in The Last of Us, the show. They spread by bites, which I liked it. I think it made a lot more sense than spores because yes, fungi do a bit s'mores, spores and stuff like that. That does happen, but it shouldn't happen as whole entire subway, underground subway things should not be covered in spores. Fungi simply do not produce that many spores, and I think they should have kept the spores, but I don't think I do like that they did add in the bite, because it makes a lot more sense. So instead of getting infected by a spore, getting infected by the spore with a gas mask and stuff like that, Ellie gets bit, and you can see the bite marks actually on, or you can see the leftover of the bite, the scar and stuff like that, and I really did like that add-in. It adds a little bit of more of a pop into the show, and it makes a lot more sense because in other zombie movies, it's spread by bites, or it's spread by a virus or something like that. The bite just makes more sense than the spore to me, personally. I don't know about other people, but it makes a lot more sense to me. And the showrunners actually did discuss this before the pilot of the series, even so episode 1 even aired. It made it a little bit more personal, and that's what they say in this article as well. We're going to skip to the next point. Tommy is missing. I'll just quote it here. Strangely, the Last of Us show reveals that Joel had lost connection with Tommy quite some time ago, despite the two speaking regularly before that, whereas the game suggests that the two simply don't talk that much anymore. It's not clear why the show implies that Tommy may be missing, though we some minor ramifications of the alternation in the future episode. Yeah, okay. That was good. I got it. It kind of made a little bit more sense to me, but I'm not going to talk about it all that much. Let's go on to episode 2. Pretty much, episode 2 follows the game sequence pretty much the same until the very end of the episode. So we'll start with the scientist opening. It's another thing. We see how the cordyceps infection actually started in Jakarta, the Philippines, and how they bomb it, and how it does nothing. I thought that was a very good sequence, and it added a lot more lore into The Last of Us. I very much liked it. A lot of people agree with me on that. So, yeah, we're not going to talk much about it. So, Ellie's bite is the next point that they bring up. In the game, they go through this area where there's a bunch of spores, and Tess and Joel have a gas mask, and Ellie's like, oh, I don't need it. She's able to breathe them in, and she's not turning. She's immune. I did like that. I did like that a lot. But also, as well as the bite, it just makes more sense to me because you can see the physical that she had been bitten, and like she had been infected, but she's not infected. I'm not infected. Makes so much more sense. I loved it. So the very end of the episode is where things start to majorly change from the plot of the game to the plot of the. Originally, Tess is killed by Fedra. She gets infected. She's killed by Fedra. So yeah, makes total sense. In the game, or not in the game, but in the show, however, Tess is killed by a horde of infected. I did like that change, and it says in here the showrunners felt that it didn't make sense for Fedra to pursue Joel, Tess, and Ellie so far into Boston. It doesn't make sense. I agree with that. It doesn't make sense. Like, what are they doing all the way out there? It really let Tess go out. Like, it gave Tess a better death in the show than in the movie. In the game. It lets her, because she literally explodes the place. She explodes the Capitol building, which was so much cooler than just getting shot, and she's killed by the infected in the explosion instead of, it gave Tess her minute of glory, because she's not very important in the rest of the show. In the game. She gets brought up a couple of times, but it's not that much. So, yeah, I like that. Ooh, this is another thing that was added in. Like, the little kiss or whatever. Basically, they're connected, because of the change, they're connected by, like, this fungal system. Whatever, the network. Like, you step on it, and then they get attacked by the horde. I like that. Like, little kiss kind of, like, makes Tess a part of that horde, and I thought it was cool before she blew everything up. Until she blew everything up. It just makes the show so horrifyingly intimate, and they say this in the article, and I love that fact. Episode 3 is so controversial, so very much controversial. And this is the main thing that I really wanted to talk about in this episode, is Frank and Bill's story, because it is entirely changed from the show. When you meet Frank in the show, he's this, excuse my language, he's just this asshole of a guy who's just lost everything in his little bunker. He's just lost everything. He doesn't have his family anymore, and, Bill had killed himself, because they had been getting into fights, and Bill had killed himself. But in the show, it gives Frank and Bill an actual story that you fall in love with these characters. And oh my gosh, I scroll through Facebook sometimes about this kind of stuff. I was scrolling through Facebook, and these people were just so upset. HBO is going woke, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. In the game, they had already been gay. Like, Frank had already been gay in the show, in the game. The show just brought it out more, I think, and gave them a natural story, which makes you feel for them, and it makes you sad that they died. And, you know, I loved it. And the story was so well made and so well written, and the actors, oh my gosh, they did such a good job. And I was so sad at the end of this episode. I was very emotional while watching this, because I was like, I love the game, and I was like, oh, this was such a good change from the game. I really felt for Frank. I didn't see him as this piece of shit asshole anymore. So, anyways, that was really the main change. We don't really hang out with Joel and Ellie that much that episode, and instead we learn a little bit more about Frank and Bill, and I love that change. Not a lot of people agree with me on that, but whatever. Episode 4, instead of being in Pittsburgh, we're in Kansas City, and instead of having like multiple people, hunt for Joel and Ellie, we find Kathleen. It says in here, really, it doesn't matter if they're in Kansas City or Pittsburgh. It just kind of moves the plot along a little bit more. Shout out to Kansas City. That's Kansas. That's cool. It was kind of fun to see. Kathleen. Here it says, The Last of Us's 4th episode introduces us to Kathleen, the leader of the Kansas City Resistance, who has more than a few grudges to settle. As you know, Kathleen doesn't exist in The Last of Us game. She's instead of a kind of an amalgamation of different characters and concepts from the games who help give Joel and Ellie human adversaries more of a face and a purpose than they had in the previously in this point of the adventure. I liked Kathleen. It made Pittsburgh / Kansas City a little bit more significant, because we actually see like the underground and all that kind of stuff like Pittsburgh doesn't really have. We see the underground of Kansas City where they hit all the horde of the infected. I really liked it. They also got rid of Ellie's kill. She does kill somebody in this part of the game that she does not kill. And she just stabs the guy instead of killing the guy. And Joel finishes them off. So I thought it was good. And then there's just this pit of infected people where we also meet Sam and Henry. And the pit of the infected people is kind of the boiling point of the episode. That's where everything explodes. And, Sam gets bit. And Sam is deaf in the show that he is not in the game. So, I thought it was good. And Last of Us episode 4 and 5 go together. So Ellie tries to save Sam in this episode. It genuinely, it makes it so horrifying, because she's like, I can save him. She puts her blood on his bite, thinking that could help him, and he turns. But when he turns, before he really, really goes, he turns away from Ellie, because he's deaf, so he doesn't hear her wake up. And oh my gosh, that ripped my heart out, because he was trying to save Ellie, and it just, I cried so much. It gets so close to home. It grabs onto your heart and just pulls at it, your heartstrings, and it just pulls at it. And yes, we got that in the game, but the show just does it so well. Sam attacks Ellie, and she screams for help. Joel and Henry go to say, and then Henry shoots his little brother, and he shoots himself. And that was just the way. And then they bury him, and that just made me cry. Episode 6, we get to Wyoming. We find an older native couple sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. They give a little bit of lore to how it happened, like, what, don't go past the river, nobody ever comes back. And then we see how the dogs, they sniff Ellie and, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of paranoia. It says here, this scene, which is not in, yes, it is in the game, but it's not in the game. It's not as this scene is not as intense as in the game as it is in the show. It really plays into Joel's paranoia that Tommy is, he's not well, he's not doing okay. While the paranoia isn't entirely unique to the game, it is more pronounced due to some of the changes that happen in the show. Oh my gosh, is Joel so paranoid in the show, not as much in the game. Tommy and Maria are having a baby. That's a little bit different. That changes a little bit of things. So it changes like why Joel decides to go with Ellie instead of sending Tommy out because Tommy has a kid on the way, that kind of stuff. And he has panic attacks in the shows, which he did not really have in the game. And Joel has a little breakdown in the show, which, yes, he did have in the game, but not as much. And Joel gets hurt in this episode. They very much simplified the way that he gets hurt in this episode in Eastern Colorado, the Eastern Colorado campus. In the game, he falls into a metal pole and has to defend off multiple raiders. It is not the same in the game where he kind of just gets stabbed. And this is where we go into episode 7. Joel is wounded in this episode, and Ellie is trying to find basic supplies, to keep him alive. In the show, she finds a needle and thread in an abandoned house and kind of sews him up. Well, in the game, it does not really happen. She has to fight off raiders at the mall, They say in this article it's easier to find sets. Sets are very hard. It's easy to abandoned mall at this point, and yeah, that kind of stuff. We get into Ellie's life in this episode as well, which it pretty much follows the DLC. It was fine. I'm not really the DLC and the episode were very good. So this goes into episode 8 where Ellie's hunting and we meet David, the religious cult leader. We see a lot more of David, who is ironically, I think, played by Joel's voice actor and mocap suit guy. Which, The Last of Us shows did this a lot because Ellie's mom is literally Ellie in The Last of Us, the game. I love that. I love that they brought back these actors. They were the originals and they're brought back in to be a part of the show. I love that. I love that the showrunners did that. It really just adds a little bit of shout out to these guys. They're pretty cool. Kind of like how Wicked did with the first 2 original actors on Broadway. We see so much more of David and how he interacts with people in his town and his little cult people, which makes the way that Ellie murks him, and it just makes it so much more real because you could tell he was manipulating these people and, abusing these people in the show, which we didn't see much of in the game. And the way that Ellie brutally, the scenes where she's like, you can say this little girl broke your fucking finger. I thought that was so much more well done in the show than the game, because there was so much more background to it, because she was seeing what was happening and that kind of stuff. We as the viewer saw what was happening, and she saw how she might have gotten carved up to, be cannibalized. So the two of them don't bond over their fight against the infected. Ellie is very sus of this guy in the show, which she is not as much as in the game. So the way that he dies is a little bit different in the show than he is in the game. And it says it here, in both the game and the show, Ellie kills David in a pretty violent fashion. In the game, though, Joel pulls Ellie off of David when she's still attacking him. In the show, Ellie actually kills that guy, and she walks out of the burning building and sees Joel. And then we see her, have a panic attack, she's dissociating because she just killed a guy on screen, and I liked that. I like that a lot. We saw a little bit more of her humanity, and it does a nice job of establishing her independence that we see more in the second game. So I think it does. The way that she kills David is done very well in a storyline kind of sense. It gives us a little bit more reason why she acts the way she does in the second game than in the first game, because she's a little bit more reliant on Joel, which she is not very reliant on Joel in the second game. Anyways, the change also, like it says here in this article, the change also likely sprung from the decision to not show Ellie straight up killing that raider in the 4th episode. Yep. Okay. I think this is the last episode. Episode 9, Ellie's birth. We don't see the way that... This is another little scene that was added on in the show that was not in the game. We see Ellie and maybe the rays and why she is, immune. We see her mom giving birth. Her mom got bitten, and she gives birth right before she dies. And her mom is played by Ellie's voice actor and mocap guy, which it just makes so much. It brings it full circle. Yeah, like I was talking about earlier. It implies that because her mother was bitten, that she is immune because she got the umbilical cord, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not a chemistry or biology guy. I don't understand it, but it makes sense. We also see we get a little bit more on why Joel tried to kill himself. Joel tells Ellie the story of the scar on his head and how he was the one that tried, I was the guy that killed me, that tried to shoot me, And then we see, in the show, that's what we see. In the game, it doesn't really happen. That conversation doesn't happen. The idea of Joel trying to kill himself isn't new in the game, like it says in this article. We just find a skeleton of a person that presumably killed themselves. It gives you a little bit more humanity to Joel that we did not really see in the game, though he is very human in the game, in the show. Yeah, you know. So in the Firefly Labs, the Last of Us game, Joel and Ellie have to fight off one more pack of infected. That is not a thing in the show. This is such a big point that people bring up. The show versus the game, we do not see as much infected in the show as we do in the game. And this is I really want to say, those were human actors that were playing the infected in the show. And if you know anything about special effects makeup, that shit takes so long to do. It takes so very much long and it's expensive because they were that's EVA foam that they were making that out of, and the EVA foam is not cheap. You could tell in the way that they painted it. The infected that we do see, none of them are yes, some of them are going to be CGI, but most of them are not. So it's probably why they didn't do as many infected. It's just very expensive. So yeah, that's kind of all the differences between the game and the show. Overall, my personal thoughts are, I think narratively, the show is a little bit better than the game. And I am excited to see how The Last of Us Season 2 does it with the game, because the game is so I'm not going to say controversial, but it's iffy on people, if people actually like it or not, and I'm excited, spoilers ahead, I'm excited to see how and when they kill off Joel, because we're going to get to know Abby and Ellie's sides of the stories, and he gets killed off 2 hours into the game, pretty early on in the game he gets killed off, and I'm wondering if they're going to do the flashback sequence that they do in the games in the movies, or in the show, or if we're gonna see Joel die at the end of the season. And I'm really excited to see where they take it from there, because Neil Druckmann has, I believe, allegedly, has said that he prefers this medium, the film medium, to the actual game medium of The Last of Us. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. I think a lot of people are. I wonder if we're going to get a third season and see how well everything goes with Ellie and Abby and all that stuff. I'm excited to see more. I believe many people are excited to see more. And those were, I guess, my hot takes of The Last of Us. This is a longer episode than the last one, but I can talk about this for days. And I can talk about a lot of video games for days. So, yeah. If you've liked this podcast, please share it with people that you know, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Thanks. Bye.